Hi guys, so today I'm going to show you how to cook some Italian country bread, the dough that's typically used in a ciabatta or a pagnotta. So firstly, let's look at the recipe itself. So if you look at the recipe, we work on percentages. So if you've got 1,000 grams of flour, typically you'll want between 70 and 80% water. And I've got 800 grams of water, which is 80%. Now, the higher the percentage water, the bigger bubbles you're going to get, and the dough is going to rise a bit higher, but it also makes it more difficult to handle. So if you find the dough very sticky, don't panic. We're then going to need a starter. Now, a starter is a dough that's been made beforehand or the day before, or I keep a starter going continuously in my fridge. And what that does is it really adds a lot of depth of flavor to the bread, and makes it much more tasty, and also helps it rise. Then we need some salt, so 2% salt. So if you've got 1,000 grams of flour, 20 grams of salt. And for this recipe, I'm going to use instant yeast. For sourdough, I don't use instant yeast at all. I only use my sourdough starter. Then for the starter itself, very simple, 150 grams of flour, 150 grams of water, and a quarter teaspoon of yeast. So let's get to the starter. Right, so I'm going to put my bowl on here. Let's just start my scale up. Guys, a little scale is very handy to have. Then I can zero that. I'm going to put 150 grams of flour in here. And the quantities don't have to be super accurate. And then I want to put 150 grams of water. There and thereabouts. And this water is going to be lukewarm, and that'll help the yeast to activate. Quarter teaspoon of yeast, sprinkle it in. And now what I'm going to do is mix that together. Okay, that's done. That's your starter. You bung that in the fridge, cover it up, and leave it in the fridge overnight, and then it's going to be ready to use for your bread. Right, so now my starter is risen overnight, and now I'm going to get down to the main bread making process. Once again, let's look at the recipe. So I'm going to use a kilogram of flour. I'm going to use a mixture of white and brown flour. Typically buy stone ground unbleached flour rather than the commercially available flour that you get in the shops. This is the brown one, and you can use a mixture of brown and whole wheat depending on the flavors that you want. So the first thing I'm going to do is activate my yeast. So I've got half a cup of warm water here and 1.5 teaspoons of active yeast, and I'll just sprinkle that on the top. And then I'll just let that sit for about 10 minutes, just to get the yeast activated. Okay, now I'm going to start my bread mix. I'll put that on, I'll zero that, and I'm going to put in about a kilogram of flour. So let's see, I'll probably mix white, and that's about 700 grams. And I'm going to put a bit of brown in, just to add a bit more flavor. You can, if you want, put a little bit of rye in to add flavor, but the more rye you put in, the harder and heavier the bread's going to get, and you're going to lose some of the bubbles. Right, I need, according to the recipe, 20 grams of salt. Let's zero that. $20 grams of salt. Right, let's just mix that together. just to get all the salts, etc. incorporated. And you can see the mixture of the water and the yeast. You can see it's going a bit creamy. After about 10 minutes that'll be nice and creamy, and then the yeast will be nicely activated. Okay, so what I need to add now, I'll zero that, is 737 grams of tap water. So let's do this. Okay, that sounds about right. To that, I'm going to add a quarter cup of starter. So this is the starter that I took out, that I made last night. And you can see all the nice air bubbles in there. And I'm going to need about 150 grams of starter. So let's just zero this again. Add some starter. It's about a cup. Okay, that's my starter in there, and then I can add my yeast mixture. That's pretty much it. Now you mix this all together. Not so difficult at all. Mix it all nicely together. You can get your hands in here as well if you want. As I said, the more water you put in, the stickier it's going to be. You can see it's a pretty sticky dough as it is. Make sure it's all incorporated. Right. Now you just leave that for about 15-20 minutes, just so it gets incorporated and all comes together. And then we're going to start the stretch and fold technique. Right, so my bread's been sitting for just a little while, and I'm now going to start stretching and folding. So you can knead the bread, but because it's quite a sticky dough, it's pretty unwieldy, and this is really much simpler. And also a little bit of fun, you get your hands full of a bit of oil. So first what I'm going to do is just oil a tray. I'm going to get a bit of oil on my hands. And we can get a bit of oil on my little... So now I'm going to take this out. And I'm going to dump the dough onto the tray. You can see that dough is pretty darn sticky. Let's just get all the bits out of here. We don't want to waste any dough. Now all we do now is we stretch and fold this bread 4 times at 15-minute intervals. If you really think the dough is too sticky and you want to practice on a dough that's not as sticky, just use a little bit less water. So what we do here is we stretch it out. And we just stretch and fold, stretch and fold. You can see it's quite sticky. And then we leave it. We do that 4 times. Okay guys, now I've stretched and folded the dough 3 times. So I'm just going to show you the final stretch and fold. And you'll get a feel for how the dough has changed its characteristics. So just still putting a little bit of oil on my hands. You'll see the dough is now much more elastic. Look at that. So what's happened is the gluten is doing its work and the dough is holding together much better than it is. So now it's ready to go into a dish or a bowl to start its final bulk fermentation process. So I've just got a little bit of oil in this bowl and I'm just going to transfer that. You can see how it's holding together nicely. Roll that around in there to get covered in a bit of oil. Now we cover that with a cloth and we let that ferment. Goes into the bulk fermentation process where it will rise 2 to 3 times its size. Probably about 2 hours, but you can wait 2 to 3 hours, it doesn't really matter. Hello guys. Right, now the bread has been rising for about 2.5 hours. And we'll see that it's really nice and bubbly. If you look here, you can see all the bubbles in there. And if I press in here, see it bounces back nicely. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is put some flour on the counter. And I'm going to turn my dough out onto the counter. I'm using this tool, but if you don't have one of these tools, you can use anything you like. Right. Okay, I normally try and get all the leftover bits in here as well. No use wasting it. Okay, now what we're going to do is just gently press the air out. We don't want to be too vicious on this because we don't want to undo all the nice work that bacteria has been doing creating bubbles. Now we cut it in half. I have one of these tools, but you can use the back of a knife if you need to. Okay, so now I'm just going to shape the dough. This is what we call a pre-shaping and a second rise. So we're going to shape it. We're going to let it rise again for about 45 minutes. To shape it, I'm just going to make a little ball just by taking the outsides and moving them to the inside. Very simple. Pop any bubbles that you see. Okay, here we have a decent shaped ball, not too critical at this stage. Do the same with this one. So if you want to have a slightly oblong loaf, then what you can do is just do that. And now you can see the shape of the loaf is more oblong. Again, pop any bubbles. Right, so now we're just going to leave those for about 45 minutes and we'll come back for the final shaping and get it onto a tray and into the oven. While it's rising, you'll probably want to get your oven on. You normally set the oven to about 200 degrees C in my oven, which is a fan oven. In a normal oven you probably go about 220 degrees centigrade. Alright, so let's leave that for now and I'll see you shortly. Right, now the bread's been resting for about 40 minutes. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do a final shape and we're going to put it on a baking tray and into the oven. The oven's been preheated at about 200 degrees C. So I'm just putting some flour onto the baking tray. Now you'll see these have gone pretty flat and that's because the dough is a very wet dough. As I suggested earlier, if you want to practice a bit just on a dough that's slightly less wet, less water, I'm going to put a bit of oil on my hands to make it easier. Now the idea with this is just to grab this and just bring it towards you. And you can see, bring it towards you. Just pop the bubbles. What we're doing now is we're just creating a little bit of tension Pop any big bubbles. Alright, so that's given it a nice shape. I'm going to transfer it to the tray now. Do the same on this one. This one I'm going to make a round loaf. Pop the big bubbles. Okay. Now transfer that to the tray. So here we are. There's the two loaves. As you can see, one's more like a ciabatta shape. And you can just do final tweaking on here, move it around. Alright. Right, sprinkle with flour. Alright, what we're going to do now is take a knife and we're just going to slash this bread 3 times. 1, 2, 3. You can see, and that will break the tension on the surface and allow the bread to rise without splitting all over the place. We'll do 4 in this one. It got quite deep. Right, that's ready to go in the oven. What I like to do is to mist my oven with a little bit of water, and this creates a humid environment for the bread, and that helps for the initial rise of the bread and also keeps the surface moist and creates quite a nice environment for a nice crispy crust. So let's put this in the oven. Right, so I've misted the oven, it's going in. Okay, right, bread's been in the oven for about 40 minutes. I'm going to take it out now and have a look. Right, that's looking pretty darn good. Let's have a look at that. This longer loaf. So now what we do, just to make sure that they're cooked, we just turn it upside down, just give it a tap. If they sound hollow, then you know it's cooked. Right, so normally you'd wait for about an hour or so for it to cool before cutting. But I'll cut it open for you anyway so you can have a look at the inside. Do yourself a favor, get yourself a decent bread knife. And there you can see the consistency, some nice bubbles in there. Smells delicious. So guys, that's pretty much the recipe. Should give you a nice, tasty, slightly chewy consistency. Enjoy your bread making.